Hello friends and fellow bakers, how you doing? It's Chef Tom from chefinstructortom.com, and we're back again this week to make some bagels with you. Yep, boiled and baked bagels. I think you're going to really enjoy these. They are so good when they are homemade. Full disclosure though, I have to say when I was growing up, I was not raised on bagels. Well, I did eat the Lender's bagels, the frozen bagels, and we even used to make something called like a pizza quick, like a bagel pizza or something like that. Again, very, very sad past in my baking. But needless to say, it's improved over the years. I have come to really love bagels over the last 35 years. And the one person who really helped me get to this point was my father-in-law, Ed. And he used to bring me to a bagel place in New Orleans that I really, really loved. It was such a great place. And you'd go and pick them out, you know, the typical bagel place you're going to find. He would carefully choose his bagels. And he really taught me to love bagels. More about him later. But when I started to bake bagels, my bagels were not that good. They were pretty misshapen. They were kind of funky looking. Sometimes they were dense. Sometimes they were just like falling apart. So I think in the last, say, 30 years, my bagel making has improved, and I want to help you improve your bagel making this week as well. So I want to pass on some of the things that I have learned about making bagels over the last few years. Bagels only need a few ingredients to get started. You really could you start with flour, water, yeast, and salt. But I did want to talk about two ingredients that can really improve your bagel making. First is vital wheat gluten. And this stuff is available in the baking aisle in most grocery stores. I call it gluten helper because what it does is it makes your strong flour a little bit stronger. Typically, bagels are going to be made using high gluten flour. We don't really have access to high gluten flour that much as a home baker, so we can kind of enhance that by using vital wheat gluten. I highly recommend it, but just a little tiny bit is all you'll need. Just a couple of grams is all you need. You'll get a good dense crumb and a very chewy texture. The other ingredient is diastatic malt powder. And you might see malt syrup, sometimes in health food stores, that kind of thing. They both add active enzymes to your bagels, and it'll help break down the carbohydrates and release the flour's natural sugars. It'll make the dough a little softer and add some color. You can put some in the poaching liquid as well when you're boiling them later on in the process. With those two ingredients, the other ingredients, as I mentioned before, are flour, water, yeast, and salt, and that's all you'll need. Well, I've got all my mise en place here. I've got my flour. This is King Arthur bread flour. I've got my water, my instant yeast, kosher salt. This is the diastatic malt powder I was mentioning before, and it doesn't look like anything. It just looks like just a powder, but it is really a nice ingredient to use. If you don't have it, you don't need it. We also have some vital wheat gluten, and the vital wheat gluten is a non-essential ingredient as well, but it's just going to enhance the texture of your finished bagels. Well, let's mix some dough, shall we? So we're going to put all the dry ingredients in there. And give that a little stir to begin. Then we can add all our water. This is 60% water for this particular dough. You want a relatively dense dough. You could make a really open crumb bagel, but it'd be kind of weird. I like starting with a spatula, get it really nice and worked in, and then change over to using your hands. I'm not going to mix this that much. I'm just going to mix it until it just comes together, and then I'm going to let it hydrate for an hour. Resist the temptation to add any more water to this. It'll hydrate pretty well. Just give it some time. It'll work. Once I've had all that flour absorbed into the dough, I can let it relax for an hour. Hydrate. I'm going to keep it covered with a towel. That's what the dough looks like now. Looks pretty raggedy right now, but in an hour it won't. Okay, let's have a look at our dough, and we see that it's not really growing a lot. With this kind of hydration, it's going to get a little softer. It's going to be a little more hydrated than it was, but it's not going to rise as much as it would if it was a little higher hydration. So let's give this a good stretch and fold. I'm going to stretch it out a little bit, fold it in thirds. Let's stretch it out again, fold it in thirds. And you can see already this dough is getting really nice, just like so. And this will be pretty much a relatively quick fermentation. The real star of the show, though, is the proofing, the overnight proofing. This is the second fold sped up quite a bit, and you're seeing here that it's really, really stiff dough. Don't be put off by that. It's not a problem. It's going to go a little harder than some doughs, but it's doable. This is the third stretch and fold, and this one I did a little more close up for you so you could see how we do it. And again, you see how smooth the dough's getting, but it's still really, really stiff. Don't worry, this will relax as it proofs overnight. Get it in the bowl and let it rest for a while, maybe 20 minutes. We're going to cut these bagels up into 100-gram pieces. You should have about 800 grams of dough to work with, which will give you 8 bagels then. You're going to have a little piece left over, which you can either add to one of the bagels or just cut it up and add it in little pieces to the bagel you already have. Now you're going to want to cut the bagels up into 100-gram pieces, and if they're not perfectly 100 grams, that's okay. Anywhere between 105, 110 is fine. You just want to keep it as uniform as possible. That way they'll bake all the same way, and they'll look very uniform when you're finished. Here we're going to round them, and you're going to want to round them with a cupping motion of your hand. You'll see as I kind of round it there, I'm going to slow it down a little bit for you and show you how it works with the thumb and the little finger. Those are the key things there. They never leave the table. You're making sort of a planetary motion, so the bagel is rolling around underneath your hand as the same time you are rounding it with your hand on the table. Once you get all 8 done, you're going to cover it with a towel and let it rest for just a little bit. And then we're going to roll them out into the cylinders. The cylinders are going to be rolled first about 6 inches long, just like you would a baguette. Just start it off the same way. And you'll see I have most of mine already rolled out there. Keep them under a towel so they don't dry out. Once you get those guys rolled out, then you can roll them all the way out to their full length of about 10 inches long. You might want to use a little bit of water on your hands if they start to dry out a little bit, and that's totally fine too. You can also wet the bench. Now that you have the bagels formed and they're ready to go in the refrigerator for their overnight proof, we're going to put a little plastic on top just so they don't dry out overnight. And one way so the plastic doesn't stick, we're going to put a little pan spray on it. This will go in your refrigerator 12, 24 hours, and we'll poach them tomorrow. Fill up a high-sided pan with water, about a gallon, about 4 inches deep, and then turn your stove on. Get that water boiling and put your malt powder in there. That's going to be about 25 to 30 grams of malt powder. Preheat the oven to 450 and get that malt powder stirred in. Take the bagels out of the refrigerator because what we're going to do is we're going to release them from the pan. We don't want them sticking as we're putting them in the water. So release them, then put the plastic back on and put it back in the refrigerator until you're ready to poach the bagels. I want to make both everything bagels and sesame bagels today. We also have another pan to put the bagels on. There's the poaching liquid with the malt powder boiling over. Now we're ready to add the bagels to the water. They should just be simmering. I don't want a rolling boil there. I just want it kind of a little bit of shimmer on top. These go in 4 at a time, and depending on the size of your pot, you could probably get all of them in if you wanted to, but I don't want to lower the temperature too much, so I'm going to just do a bit at a time. I'm going to do 30 seconds on a side, and then I'm going to turn them over. Notice I put the bagels in upside down, and now they are right side up. So when I retrieve them from the water and I put them back in the pan, you'll see that they are right side up. Drain them off, of course. And then once you have them all retrieved, you can go ahead and add your second set. Add them upside down, 30 seconds on a side, and then turn them over, and then 30 seconds more, and then you are going to retrieve them all. Move these over to your bench, and what we're going to do is we're going to take 4 of these off and put them on the other pan. You want to have a little bit more room so that they can grow, but also I don't want to have the sesame with the everything and the everything with the sesame. Once all your seeds are on, you are ready to bake. Your oven should be at 450, and slide those guys right in the oven. And you're going to set the timer for 20 minutes. Set them on a wire rack to cool. Look at the color on those guys. That looks so good. Best way to slice a bagel is never like this. You don't want to aim the knife at your hand. So what you want to do is cut it almost like a cake using a serrated knife. Keep your hand on top of it the whole time. And as you slice through it, boom, you're all the way through it. You open it up. Oh, that's so good. You can pick up these extra little seeds there. And then you can top it with your egg sandwich. Well, see how easy it is to make bagels? It was fun too, right? I hope you had a good time making them. I know you can make your own bagels if you put your mind to it. They are not hard, they're pretty easy, and now you don't have to go to the bagel shop anymore. I do have one more story about my father-in-law, Ed, and I do think of him when I make bagels. He was a doctor of medicine who studied the effects of salt on the human body. He was a huge advocate of lowering our salt intake. I didn't do much to help that, unfortunately. He asked me once, though, if I could make bagels that had less salt. He felt they were too salty. And I explained to him that most breads, and especially bagels, are going to have about 2% salt. That's pretty much across the board standard salt percentage. But I said, you know, he'd done a lot for me. He's a good guy. I really like the guy. I want to do something nice for him. And so I made him some bagels that were only 1% salt. And he tasted them, and he loved them. He went nuts for them. And he says, oh, we should make all the bread 1% now. And I said, well, let's not get crazy here. I tasted them, and let's just say I was very happy to make him happy. It was a good thing that he enjoyed those bagels. And I made him a couple more times like that. I did not get to make him too much more bread at 1%, though. And I really can't, I can't say that I enjoyed them that much. I don't know if you would either. But he was definitely into it. So you can think of him, you know why I'm thinking of him when I make bagels. He is a major influence in my life. Well, I hope you do try them, and I hope you try to make bagels for a loved one. And think of them when you're making your bagels too. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you next week. Happy baking.